All right, through vacation and into December, we're going to be writing something called a narrative. A narrative is essentially a story. Often in the past we have done something called a personal narrative, which you probably have written already before in previous grades. A personal narrative is a personal story about some time in your life. So, this year we can write any kind of narrative, whether it's a personal narrative or any type of story. That means you can do fiction or nonfiction. However, I'm sure you'll realize that this particular narrative, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, does have to do with something like the hero's journey. Now, your character doesn't have to go through every step of the hero's journey, but hit the major ones. As far as your character has to go get a call to adventure, has to have some kind of crisis, mentors or allies have to be involved, and of course there has to be some kind of treasure or elixir that your hero brings back. Now it can be any kind of hero. We've talked about several kinds of heroes in class. We've talked about a romantic hero, an epic hero, a tragic hero, and an anti-hero. You can choose any one of those for your protagonist. You can also have your choice of narrator type. You can either do a first-person narrator or a third-person narrator. It might be easier to stick with the first person, but totally your choice. Now you're going to be getting some other requirements as well. Of course, to assess this, we're going to have a rubric. And that rubric has 5 different standards which you're going to be assessed upon. You'll find this rubric on Google Classroom in the assignment itself, which has just been posted. But let's talk a little bit briefly about what these 5 standards will be. The first standard is that you have a logical sequence to your story. It somewhat follows the hero's journey, and it has well-developed characters. Your characters seem round, dynamic, and believable. The second standard is that your story has awesome dialogue. And what makes awesome dialogue is that it really does the job of S in S-T-E-A-L, of characterization. The speech of a character really reveals who that character is, their personality, their motivations, their wants, their desires. So if their dialogue, their speech can show that about them, then you know you've done a good job. Third standard is that your story uses transitional words and phrases. What transitional words and phrases do, they're kind of like signposts for your reader or listener of your story to kind of keep track of where you are in the progress of your story. We'll talk about those a little bit more in detail as we go along. This fourth standard, a lot of English teachers just love for any kind of writing. It just makes for good writing. Precise and descriptive language. What that means is that you take care to use words that are very descriptive, precise, that you name things that need a name, that you're not just very vague and unspecific. One of the best kinds of precise and descriptive language is sensory detail. That's details that describe the 5 senses that are happening in a scene. So sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. If you can describe how those things are involved in a scene, like how something looks, how something sounds, the feel of something, the taste of something, the smell of something, automatically it becomes much more descriptive. The ones that are obviously most popular, people always describe the sight of things, how they look. Sound, whenever you use dialogue, you're using that sensory detail. Touch is a little rarer, and taste and smell are also quite rare for description. But as long as you make an effort to use as many of these as you can in a scene, it makes for a much more descriptive scene or a much more descriptive character. Last standard you're going to be judged on is the format of your paper. Even though we are doing this within Google Docs, it still has to be formatted in the traditional way an English essay is formatted, and that is going to be in the MLA format. MLA stands for Modern Language Association, and that's just kind of the set of standards to format your paper that have been around forever. You'll use them through high school and college and beyond. So, more detail on MLA format is going to be within the assignment in Google Classroom. There's actually another video just for MLA, so check it out. So the 5th standard also not only includes MLA, but also your standard editing practices for a paper. Is your paper well edited? Have you checked for spelling, grammar, punctuation? Have you tried to eliminate run-ons and fragments? All that fits into this last standard format. So as long as you hit those 5 standards, you can write about pretty much anything you want. As long as you demonstrate those 5 things, you're good to go. I don't even really care about the length of it. If you're really curious though, maybe 500 to 2,000 words would probably be a good neighborhood to stay within. But again, it's up to you. If you want to write more, fine. If you can write less and still show all those standards and have your hero go through a hero's journey, whatevs. So, tomorrow we're going to start the brainstorming process. Bring your questions that you might have about this narrative and we'll answer them then. Otherwise, be prepared to write. All right, I'll see you in class.